She was the most beautiful woman in the kingdom. She was also the most dangerous. Every alpha who had ever come to claim her had left without her, and usually without their dignity. She preferred it that way, until the day a man with no title, no crest, and absolutely no sense of self-preservation told her she was doing it wrong. Part 1. The woman. No one could win. The alpha was still talking. Zara watched him from across the courtyard, with her arms folded and her expression perfectly blank. He had been talking for 7 minutes. She had counted. He was broad and loud, and kept gesturing at her like she was a painting he was considering purchasing. Her father stood to the side, patient in the way that meant, "Please, Zara, just this once." She had seen that face her whole life. She had been ignoring it her whole life. "Oh, I have united 3 territories," the alpha was saying. "My bloodline is older than the Eastern Mountains. My wolves number in the thousands." He spread his hands like he was presenting a gift. "There is no better match in the known kingdoms." He smiled at her then, confident, settled into his own certainty. She almost felt sorry for him. "Fight me," she said. The courtyard went very quiet. Her father closed his eyes. "I beg your pardon," the alpha said. "A duel." She kept her voice light, the way you would when explaining something simple to someone slow. "Win, and I am yours. No negotiation, no ceremony, no waiting. You beat me, you leave with me today." A pause. "Unless you are afraid." He laughed. It was the kind of laugh men use when they want a woman to feel small. "You are a princess," he said. "Nay, I am not going to fight a princess." "You are going to lose to one," she said pleasantly, "but that is your choice." He fought her. He lost in under a minute. She stood over him in the dirt with the flat of her blade resting against his throat, not even breathing hard, and looked down at the man who had just finished listing his thousands of wolves and his ancient bloodline. "Is that your best?" she asked. He said nothing. She stepped back, handed her blade to the nearest guard, and walked away. She walked past her father without looking at him, past the stunned courtiers, past the whispers that followed her everywhere. Impossible, disrespectful. That girl will never be tamed. She had heard those too, her whole life. She wore them like armor. She had been rejecting suitors since she was 16, and it had started as a joke, almost. The first alpha to come calling had been twice her age, and spoken to her like she was furniture that would eventually need moving. She had challenged him to a duel before she had fully thought it through. He had accepted because his pride would not allow him to refuse a girl. She put him down in 3 moves. Her father had been furious. Then he had seen how the other alphas reacted, with fascination, with competition, with that specific arrogance of men who believed they could succeed where others had failed, and he had allowed it to continue. Thinking eventually someone would come along who could beat her. No one came. She was not surprised. She had been training since she could walk. While her sisters had learned how to enter a room, Zara had learned how to take one. While they practiced grace, and she had practiced until her hands bled and her body moved like water around every attack, every stance, every tell a man could give before he swung. She did not hate men. She simply did not need one. She had decided this quietly, privately, when she was very young, watching her mother sit at a window waiting for a man to come home. Her mother had been the most beautiful woman in the province, the most gracious, the most obedient. She had given everything to a king who treated her kindness like a given. Zara had filed that away like a wound. She would not wait at any window. She would not be handed to anyone. If the laws of the kingdom demanded she take a mate from an alpha house, then she would make the conditions impossible and live, unencumbered, inside that loophole forever. It was a perfectly good plan, and it had been working perfectly for 4 years. The training ground was empty when she arrived that afternoon, the way she preferred it. Just her and the weight of her sword, and the one place in the palace where nothing was required of her, except to be very good at the one thing she had chosen. She ran her forms, precise, controlled, the footwork her trainer had drilled into her at 10 years old, the sequences she had refined herself over years of actual combat, the small adjustments she was still working out, the way her shoulder dropped half a beat too early on the third combination, the thing she had been trying to correct for months. She did not notice him at first. When she did not break her rhythm. She corrected her footwork, reset her grip, moved into the next sequence, and he was standing at the outer fence with his arms resting on the rail. No house crest on his tunic, no knight's colors. He was lean in the way that came from actual use rather than performance, and he was watching her the way people watched things that genuinely interested them, not hungry, not waiting for her to notice him, just watching. Something moved in her chest. She drove through the next combination and killed it. She went back to her forms. "That last sequence," he said. She stopped. "That was a great move." His voice was easy, unhurried. "You could have done more with it." The training ground was very quiet. Zara turned slowly. She looked at him with the full weight of her attention, the look she gave everything she was about to take apart. "What?" she said carefully. "It is your bloodline." "No one worth mentioning," he said. "Then you do not," she said, "have the right to speak to me about fighting." He considered this for a moment, not offended, not rattled. Something in his expression was almost amused, not the laughing kind, the quiet kind, which was somehow more irritating. "Land a hit on me," he said. "I'll leave." She looked at him. He looked back. She picked up her sword. She could not land a hit. That was the part she could not account for later. She was the best fighter in 3 provinces. She had put down alphas twice his size. She read bodies the way scholars read text, the lean of a shoulder, the weight shift before an attack, the breath before the swing. He gave her nothing. He didn't fight back, which was almost worse. He simply was never where she aimed. Not aggressively, not with any drama. He just moved, clean and unhurried, like he had all the time in the world, and she was free to try for as long as she liked. After the 4th attempt, she stopped. He waited. "You have some training," she said. It came out colder than she intended. "A little," he agreed. "Where?" "Here and there." She stared at him. He had the audacity to look perfectly pleasant about it. "Same offer still stands," he said. "I'll show you what I saw, if you want." She sheathed her sword. She walked back to the palace without another word. That night, she could not sleep. She lay on her back and stared at the ceiling with her arms folded across her chest, like she was already annoyed at something, which she was. She could not name it precisely, which made it worse. She replayed the afternoon, and the way he had just moved, like water around a stone, like it cost him nothing. She replayed the expression on his face when she had pulled rank, the way it had not changed. Most men reacted to her title with either fear or doubled arrogance. He had looked at her the way you might look at a door that had been nailed shut, with calm awareness that it was closed, and no particular urgency about it. She turned over. The wall was not better than the ceiling. She turned back. Her handmaid, Zara, knocked quietly and entered with a small lamp. Zara had not called her. Zara set the lamp on the table, adjusted the flame, and then straightened and looked at her mistress lying rigidly in the dark, with both eyes open and her jaw set. Zara said nothing. She picked up Zara's sword from the corner and began to clean it. It was already clean, and she had cleaned it 2 hours ago. "I didn't ask you to do that," Zara said. "No, my lady," Zara said. Silence. "It was already clean," Zara said. "Yes, my lady," Zara said, and kept cleaning it. Zara turned back to the ceiling. She told herself she simply needed water. She got up. She got water. She did not need water. She lay back down. By morning, she had decided 2 things with complete certainty. First, she was going back to the training ground because she had identified a flaw in her second combination that needed correcting, and that was entirely unrelated to anything else. Second, she would demonstrate to whoever that man was that his assessment of her technique was incorrect, once she had practiced enough to be sure, at which point she would tell him so, and that would be the end of it. She was very clear on this. "I set your training clothes out," Zara said from the doorway. Zara looked at her. "Just in case," Zara said, with the face of a woman who has been in service for 12 years and has seen everything. Part 2. Just for the training. He was already there when she arrived. She noticed this the way she noticed most things, immediately, and without showing it. He was working through his own forms on the far side of the yard, unhurried, with that same clean economy of movement she had watched the day before. He did not look up when she came in. She went to her usual corner, started her warm-up. For a while, neither of them spoke. The morning was cool, and the yard was otherwise empty, and the only sounds were footwork on packed earth and the soft ring of steel. She was on her 4th sequence when he spoke. "Ache, your right hip." He still wasn't looking at her. "When you reset after the combination, it comes forward before your weight transfers. Telegraphs the next move." She opened her mouth. "You can tell me I'm wrong," he said, still not looking. "After you try it without." She closed her mouth. She tried it without. Her next combination was faster by half a beat. She could feel the difference immediately. The way the sequence locked into itself cleanly. The slight gain she had been chasing for months without knowing its name. She said nothing about this. "Again," he said. "I don't take orders," she said. "It wasn't an order." A pause. "It was a suggestion." She did it again. They worked like that for 2 hours. He corrected her when he saw something, and she ignored him for approximately 15 seconds before trying what he said, because she was not so proud that she would sacrifice the improvement just to make a point. He never acknowledged that she had done it, or that it worked. He simply moved on to the next thing. She found this either deeply respectful or deeply aggravating. She had not decided which. At one point, he crossed the yard to adjust her grip. He did not ask. He simply stepped in close, positioned his hand over hers on the hilt, and shifted her thumb half an inch. He was close enough that she could see the faint scar along his left jaw. Old, clean. The kind of scar that came from someone who knew exactly what they were doing. She looked at it for exactly 1 second too long. "There," he said, and stepped back. Like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just stood close enough that she'd forgotten what she was holding. She ran the combination again. Her grip was better. She was furious about it. "You can ask me anything," he said, when they were both resting against the far wall. "About the technique." "I wasn't going to ask you anything," she said. "I know," he said. "I was just saying you could." Silence. "Why do you move like that?" she said, "where it costs you nothing?" He tilted his head slightly. "How do you mean?" "Most fighters, when they're defending, when they're redirecting, there's effort in it. Resistance. You don't resist anything. You just—" She stopped. She did not have the word. "Redirect," he said. She looked at him. He had used her word, the word she had been searching for, and like he had already known she was looking for it. "Yes," she said carefully. He was quiet for a moment, looking at the yard. "Fighting something directly uses twice the energy," he said. "If you already know where a thing is going, you can spend that energy somewhere else." She thought about this. "That applies to more than fighting," she said. He looked at her then. Really looked. For the first time since she had arrived. Something in his expression shifted. Not surprise. Something quieter than surprise. Recognition, maybe. Like she had just said something he had been waiting to hear without knowing he was waiting. "Yes," he said. "It does." The moment sat there between them for one beat too long. She picked up her sword and went back to her forms. She did not think about the way he had looked at her, as she thought about it for the rest of the afternoon. She came back the next day, and the day after that. She should have stopped coming back. She didn't. She had a different excuse each time. The shoulder rotation on her overhead strike needed addressing. There was a counter-movement she had seen him use that she wanted to examine closely, strictly from a technical standpoint. She woke up thinking about the hip weight problem, and there were additional refinements she needed to test. The excuses were becoming harder to construct with a straight face. Zara stopped asking why she was awake early. She simply had the training clothes ready. She had the sword out. Once, she had a small cup of warm spiced tea sitting on the table. And when Zara raised her eyebrow, Zara said, "It's a long walk to the training ground, my lady," with a face so neutral it could have been carved from stone. "You're insufferable," Zara told her. "Yes, my lady," Zara agreed, and handed her the tea. His name was Kale. She learned this in the second week, not because she asked directly. She did not ask directly, but because she mentioned with total indifference that she did not know what to call him when she needed his attention. He told her. "Kale," he said. She tried it once, quietly, while he was demonstrating a footwork pattern, and then pretended she had been commenting on something else. He had the decency not to react. That same week, she asked where he had trained. He smiled at the yard rather than at her. "Many places," he said. "That's not an answer," she said. "No," he agreed pleasantly. "It's not." She waited, as he offered nothing else. She went back to her forms with the distinct and irritating feeling that there was an entire conversation happening underneath the one they were actually having, and she was only privy to half of it. The morning she noticed his hands. She was not looking for anything specific. She simply looked, the way you look at something you are standing near every day. His hands were steady in a way that spoke of long practice. Not tense, not tight, simply settled. There was a callus on his right palm, thumb side, that did not come from the grip of a standard blade, a different weapon, a heavier one, or one held differently. She filed this away. Later, running through a footwork pattern, she asked casually, "What's your primary weapon?" He glanced at her. What makes you think it isn't a sword? The callus, she said. Thumb side, right palm. That's not from a standard grip. Something moved through his face. Not alarm. Something more like appreciation. Like she had just done something that surprised him, and he hadn't expected to be surprised. You're very observant, he said. I know, she said. You didn't answer the question. He picked up his sword and went back to his forms. She stared at the back of his head for a moment. He was hiding something. Not dangerously. Not with the feel of a man who meant harm. But there were edges to him that did not add up, and he wore the gaps in his story the way someone wore familiar clothes. Comfortably, without thinking about it. She did not know what to do with this, why she filed it under things to consider later, and went back to her drills. She thought about it for the rest of the afternoon. 3rd week. A Tuesday, she thought, though she had stopped tracking days with any reliability. She was running the high combination, the one she had been rebuilding since week 1, and she came in too fast on the final sequence and lost the angle. She corrected, barely, and the move landed ugly. You rushed it, he said. I know, she said, resetting. You rush things when something is on your mind. She stopped. She turned to look at him. That was her first mistake. He was watching her with that expression, not amused, not probing, just steady, like he was simply saying what he saw, the way you commented on weather. Most people don't notice that, she said. See, most people aren't watching, he said. The yard was quiet. She reset her stance, ran the combination again, clean, the right pace. Landed it perfectly. Neither of them said anything about the moment that had just passed, but it sat in the air between them, the way certain things do, acknowledged without being named, which is its own kind of naming. That same week, the correction with the wrist, they were working on a defense sequence, the kind that required close drill work, and he stepped in to guide her through a block in real time. His hand found her wrist. Not rough, not careful the way people are careful with things they think might break. Just present. Like it was the most natural thing. He walked her through the motion. She felt the angle he was showing her. She also felt, very precisely, in that she had stopped breathing. Rotate here, he said. Just slightly. She rotated. The block locked into place. Good, he said, and let go. She ran the block 3 more times. It was perfect. All 3 times. She was not thinking about the block. You're quiet, he said. I'm always quiet, she said. You're quieter than usual, he said. That's different. She did not look at him. Focus on your footwork, she said, which was not an answer, and they both knew it. He let it go. She added this to the growing list of things he let go without pressing, and found, inconveniently, that the list itself was becoming a problem. That night, Zara brought tea, and did not pretend it was for any reason other than the reason it was. She sat across from Zara and waited. Zara held the cup. It said nothing for a long time. He notices things, she said finally. Zara waited. Not the way other people notice things, not to use them or to perform seeing them. He just notices, and then he doesn't do anything with it. That sounds like someone who simply pays attention, Zara said carefully. No one pays attention, Zara said. Not to me. Not without wanting something back. Zara said nothing. She did not need to. Zara looked at her tea. It's just the training, she said. Of course, Zara said. "It's only been 3 weeks." "Yes, my lady." "It doesn't mean anything." "Of course not." A pause. "He has a scar on his jaw," Zara said. "Old one. Clean edge. Not from a brawl." Zara blinked, very slowly. "Shall I find out more about him?" "No," Zara said immediately. Then, "No, don't." She picked up her tea. Zara looked at her with the expression of someone watching a fire that hasn't been told yet that it is a fire. She said nothing. She refilled the tea. She laughed in the 3rd week. It was nothing. He made a dry observation about one of the palace guards, who had been watching their sessions every morning from the same window with the same expression, like he was watching something he couldn't entirely explain, and had given up trying. "He's been there every morning for 16 days, Kyle said. "At this point, I think he's invested in the outcome." It caught her off guard. She laughed, genuine, clear, the kind that comes out before you can decide to stop it. She stopped it. Kale did not laugh, and he had this way of being amused that never quite reached his whole face. It landed in his eyes, and stayed there, quiet and warm. "You can do that," he said. "Do what?" she said. "Laugh. It won't ruin anything." "I know it won't," she said coolly. "I choose not to." "Right," he said. He handed her the training sword. She took it without looking at him, which was a mistake, because not looking at him meant she was too aware of his hand near hers when she took the grip. She went back to the other side of the yard. She did not think about the way he had said it, "won't ruin anything," like he had known exactly what she was protecting. She thought about it for the rest of the morning. She came back the next morning. He was already there. He handed her the training sword before she reached her corner, it without looking up from sharpening his own blade. Just held it out. Like he had known she was coming. Like he had been waiting. Like this was something they simply did now. She almost said thank you. She took the sword, said nothing. He went back to sharpening. She stood there for 1/2 second, sword in hand, morning cool, the yard empty except for them, and felt something shift inside her chest, like a weight moving to a different shelf. She went to her corner. She ran her forms, and it was sometime during the 3rd sequence that she understood, very quietly and without drama, that she had run out of things to call this. Training didn't fit anymore. Neither did coincidence. And that was a problem. Because if it wasn't either of those, then she already knew what it was. It was somewhere in the 4th week, and she didn't realize it yet. But something had already shifted, that it became impossible to call it anything else. She was not naive. She had always understood, in the abstract, how this thing worked. The warmth, the pull, the specific quality of someone's presence that made a room feel different when they entered it. She had observed it in other people her whole life. She had simply assumed it would not happen to her, or that if it did, she would be able to set it down the way she set down everything inconvenient. She had not accounted for the fact that it would not feel like a weakness. It felt instead like something quietly opening, like a door she had kept locked so long she had forgotten it was a door. She noticed when he was tired before he said anything, as she noticed the small shift in how he stood when something was on his mind. She learned the rhythm of his silences. There were at least 3 different kinds, and knew which one meant he was thinking, and which meant he was watching, and which meant he was simply content. She filed all of this under situational awareness and combat observation, and knowing your training partner. She filed it very quickly. She filed it without looking at it too closely, The problem was it kept getting out. One afternoon he said something small, an observation about the light on the eastern wall, how it changed through the morning. Nothing significant, the kind of thing that gets said and dissolves. She looked at him and felt something so specific and clear that for one terrible second, she could not find a single thing to file it under, and she changed the subject fast. He let her. She noticed he always let her. She was beginning to understand that this, specifically, was the thing she had no defense against. 4th week, a Thursday. They were drilling a 2-person defense sequence, and he called the move wrong. He said outside block when he clearly meant inside. She corrected him. He looked at her. "You're right," he said, without a flicker of wounded pride. Just, "You're right." Like it was simple. She stared at him for a moment. "You did that deliberately," she said slowly. He said nothing. "You called it wrong to see if I was paying attention." The corner of his mouth moved, not quite a smile, the suggestion of one. "Were you?" he said. She looked at him for a long moment. "You are," she said carefully. "Oh, the most irritating person I have ever trained with." "But the most useful," he said. A pause. She picked up her sword. "Marginally," she said. He laughed then. Really laughed. Low and brief. And she turned her back so he wouldn't see the thing that happened to her face. She reset her stance. She was smiling. She stopped smiling. She reset her stance again. The night that changed things was unremarkable from the outside. They had stayed later than usual. The light had gone amber and long by the time they stopped, and the training ground was lit in that specific way where everything looks both sharper and softer than it actually is. She was cooling down. He was sitting on the low wall, watching the last of the light on the eastern wall. She did not know why she said it. She had not planned to say anything. "And I used to come here alone," she said, "even before I had a reason to train. I just liked that no one expected anything of me here." He didn't respond right away. "And now?" he said. She looked at him. "And now," she said, "I still don't feel like anything's expected." She had not meant to say that either. The light was doing something specific to the yard, and he was sitting very still on the wall, and the silence that followed was the particular kind that arrives when something true has been said out loud for the first time. "I know what you mean," he said, quietly, like it cost him something. She believed him. That was the part she could not file anywhere. She believed him. Not because it made sense, not because she had enough information to trust it, but because everything he had said to her in 4 weeks had been exactly what it appeared to be, and she had run out of reasons to treat this as different. She stood up, picked up her sword. "Same time tomorrow," she said. "Same time," he said. She walked back to the palace. She did not look back. She wanted to. That night Zara brought tea, sat down, looked at her. "My lady." "Don't," Zara said. Zara pressed her lips together. "I wasn't going to say anything." "Good." "I was simply going to ask if you wanted honey." "I don't want honey." "Of course." A pause. "You've been training every morning for 4 weeks. I'm aware. He seems, Zara, like a very competent trainer," Zara finished, without changing her expression at all. Zara picked up her tea. "Get out," she said, but the edge was not really in it. Zara went, and in the corridor, out of sight, permitted herself a very small smile. Part 3. The Agreement. Her father called her in the 5th week. She sat across from him in the receiving room with the afternoon light coming through the high windows, and watched him choose his words carefully, which meant she was not going to like them. "The political situation," he said finally, "has become less flexible." She waited. "There are 3 houses that have formally renewed their interest." He met her eyes. "I have held them off as long as I can. You know this cannot continue indefinitely." "My terms stand," she said. "Zara." His voice was tired, not unkind. "I am not asking you to surrender yourself to someone unworthy, and I am asking you to consider, genuinely consider, that the purpose of the law is not to diminish you. Then, it has a very unfortunate effect. It has an effect you have never examined," he said quietly, "because you decided what it meant before you were old enough to know what anything meant." She was quiet. "You cannot fight the whole world," he said. "I can," she said. "I've been practicing." He looked at her for a long time. Something in his face was sad, in the way of parents who watch their children build walls, and cannot say aloud that they understand exactly who taught them to lay the bricks. 3 months, he said. "I will give you 3 months." She stood. She left without answering. She found Cale at the training ground as the sun was going low. She did not go looking for him. She went to the training ground because she went to the training ground every day. And he was often there in the evening, and that was not the same thing as going looking for him. He was sitting on the low wall at the far end, sharpening a blade. He looked up when she came in, read something in her face, and did not ask. She started warming up. She worked through her forms 3 times. Hard. The kind of training that was not really about the training. "Zara," he said. She stopped. She did not turn right away. She stood with her back to him and breathed. "There is no version of this that works," she said. "You know that." He was quiet. "You don't have a bloodline. You're not of any house. You are—" She stopped, started again. "The law requires—" "I know what the law requires," he said. She turned, and he was watching her without any of the things she was braced for. Without hurt, without argument, without that particular look men got when they were about to tell her she was wrong about her own feelings. He just looked at her. "I know," he said again, softer. The training ground was very quiet. "Then we should—" she started. "Yes," he said. They had not said it. Neither of them had said what it was, or named what they were agreeing to stop. But they both knew, and the not saying it was its own kind of acknowledgement, that there had been something to stop, that they were both aware of it, that it had not been only her. "Training only," she said. "Training only," he agreed. She nodded. Once, precise, the way she decided things, and she walked back across the yard and picked up her sword and did not train for the rest of the evening. She stood in the middle of the training ground with the sword in her hand and looked at nothing and eventually went inside. She got home that night and did not know what to do with her hands. That was the first sign something was wrong. She always knew what to do with her hands. She set her sword down, picked it up, set it down again. Zara appeared in the doorway, read the room in approximately 1 second, and disappeared without saying anything, which was either very wise or very irritating, and Zara could not decide which. She washed her face, changed, sat on the edge of her bed, stood up, sat back down. The training ground was 3 minutes from her chambers. She knew this because she had walked it every morning for 5 weeks. 3 minutes there, and she could She could what? Exactly. Walk in and say actually disregard everything I just said, stand in the yard in the dark, and stare at the wall he had been sitting on. She lay down. She stared at the ceiling. The ceiling had nothing useful to offer. She thought about the agreement. Training only. She had said it with the same voice she used to decide everything. Clean. Final. No room for negotiation. She had meant it the way she meant things. She had walked back across the yard and picked up her sword, and she had not looked at his face when she said it. She had not looked at his face because she had known that if she did, she would not say it at all. That was the part she kept returning to. She pressed her palms flat against the bed and looked at the ceiling and allowed herself for the first time to ask the question she'd been walking around for 5 weeks, like it was a fire she didn't want to get close to. Was that the right thing? The answer came back immediately, and she did not like it. She turned over. She had made the sensible decision. She had looked at the situation clearly. No bloodline, no house, the law, her father's 3 months, the wall of expectation that surrounded her on every side, and she had made the only decision that made sense given all of it. She was good at making sensible decisions. She had been making them her whole life. She had built her entire existence on the ability to look at a thing clearly and act accordingly. The problem was, she could still feel it. Not faintly. Not as a distant warmth she could talk herself out of. Specifically and precisely. The weight of it, the shape of it, the exact quality of his presence that made the training ground feel different when he was in it. She could feel the 4 weeks of mornings, like they were something physical. She could feel the moment she had laughed and stopped herself, and the moment he had said it won't ruin anything, like he already knew what she was protecting. She had told him training only, and she could still feel all of it, every bit, like she had closed a door, and the door had made no difference whatsoever to what was on the other side of it. She sat up. This was the part that frightened her, not the feeling itself. She could manage feelings. She had been managing them her whole life. What frightened her was that she did not want it to stop. She had spent 5 weeks calling it something else, filing it somewhere, driving through the next combination every time it surfaced. And then tonight, she had sat across from him in the low light and said the sensible thing and walked away. And the first thought she'd had when she got back to her chambers was not relief. It was not that was the right call or good. That's settled. Or any of the things a sensible decision was supposed to feel like. It was I should not have said that. She pressed her hands over her face. She was Zara, daughter of the Alpha King. She had put men twice her size in the dirt. She had rejected every suitor her father had placed in front of her for 4 years. She had decided, very young, very clearly, that she would not be the woman at the window, that she would not give herself to something she had not chosen, that her life would move by her terms, or it would not move at all. She had chosen, tonight, by her own terms, and every part of her was telling her she had chosen wrong. She lay back down. Zara knocked softly and entered with tea, set it on the table, and looked at her mistress lying rigid in the dark, with both hands flat on her stomach, and her jaw set, and her eyes fixed on the ceiling, like she was having a very serious argument with it. Zara sat down in the chair by the window. She did not offer anything, did not prompt, just sat, the way she had sat near Zara through every difficult thing since Zara was old enough to have difficult things, quiet and present in the way of someone who understood that sometimes being near a person was the whole job. I told him training only, Zara said to the ceiling. I know, Sura said. It was the right decision. Sura said nothing. It was the logical decision, Zara said, given everything. Sura was quiet for a moment, then carefully, and Zara closed her eyes. And I can still feel it, she said. All of it, like I said nothing. The room was very quiet. My lady, Sura said gently, what is it you actually want? The question sat in the air between them. Zara did not answer it. She did not answer it because the answer was sitting right there at the front of her chest, clear and specific and entirely inconvenient, and saying it out loud would make it real in a way she was not ready for. She picked up the tea instead. It was already cold. She had been lying there longer than she'd realized. Go to sleep, Sura, she said. Sura stood, moved to the door, paused. The clothes will be ready in the morning, she said, in case. In case of what? Zara said. Sura looked at her for a long, quiet moment. In case you decide, she said simply, that the logical decision and the right decision are not always the same thing. She left. Zara sat in the dark with the cold tea in her hands and stared at nothing. She did not sleep for a very long time. She was at the training ground the next morning before the sun had fully cleared the eastern wall. She told herself she was there to train. She was not there to train. She had spent the night staring at the ceiling, turning Sura's words over. The logical decision and the right decision are not always the same thing. And by the time the first gray light came through the window, she had already decided. She would go to the yard. She would find him. She would tell him that maybe she had spoken too quickly, that maybe there was another way to think about it, that maybe training only did not have to be the last word on the subject. She had not worked out exactly what that other way looked like. She would figure that out when she saw his face. She ran her warm-up, slowly. Her eyes kept finding the gate. The gate stayed empty. She ran another sequence. Looked again. Still nothing. She walked to the far wall, the low wall where he sat in the evenings. She stood there for a moment, like she was checking something, though she could not have said what. She checked the upper yard, the side entrance by the armory. Empty. Both of them. She came back to the center of the training ground and stood there in the pale morning light, with her sword at her side, and the yard completely, quietly, entirely to herself. The same yard she had loved for years, because no one expected anything of her here. It had never felt this small before. She thought as much. She picked up her sword and went home. Part 4. The Masked Alpha. The delegation arrived 10 days later. Zara learned of it the way she learned most things she did not want to know. Through her father, in the receiving room, with afternoon light coming through the high windows. A formal courtship delegation from a neighboring alpha house. The head of the delegation wished to pursue the traditional rite. He is masked, her father said. She frowned. But why? They say it is the custom of his house. He wishes to be known by his merit before his name. A pause. I thought you might appreciate that. She thought this was a thin justification for a strange practice, but she had no particular energy left for arguing about customs. Fine, she said. He has also specifically requested the duel, she said flatly. They've heard about the duel. They have heard about you, her father said carefully, and he wishes to face you properly, by your terms. She looked at him for a long moment. "Arrange it," she said. The courtyard was filled. Word had spread. It always spread. And there were courtiers along every wall, servants in the upper windows, the particular charged silence of people who had come expecting something, that her father was seated at the far end. The delegation stood in formation behind their champion. The masked alpha was already in the yard when she arrived. She assessed him the way she assessed everyone: lean, controlled. No performance in how he stood. He was not playing to the crowd, not adjusting his posture for the watching eyes. He held himself with a quiet self-possession that did not need the room. Something shifted in the back of her mind. She pushed it down. The terms were stated, the tradition invoked. She drew her sword. He drew his. He was the best she had ever fought. She understood this within the first minute, not because he was overwhelming. He wasn't, not in the way the big aggressive alphas were, but because he was present in a way none of them had been. He watched her. He read her, and he moved the way someone moved when they were not trying to beat her, but simply engaging with her, meeting her exactly where she was. She came at him with her first combination. He redirected. Clean. Economical. Spending almost nothing on it. She stopped. Redirected. The word landed somewhere deep. She tried the second combination. He moved with her weight shift. Had anticipated it before she committed. She had telegraphed it. She had her hip. Her right hip had come forward before the weight transfer. The courtyard noise went distant, not quiet. She could still hear it, but it moved away from her, like sound heard through water, because she was not in the courtyard anymore. She was somewhere 4 weeks back, standing in the early morning, while a voice said, "When you reset after the combination, and it comes forward before your weight transfers, telegraphs the next move." Her chest went cold. She tried again, this time correcting the hip. He adjusted. He had expected the tell, and when it didn't come, he didn't stumble. He simply recalibrated, like he knew her whole body, like he had spent weeks learning exactly how she moved. He had. She ran through every combination she knew. Each time he met her. Each time she felt it. The echo of a morning, a correction, a grip adjustment, a footwork note delivered with perfect patience. She felt 4 weeks of sessions in every exchange, in every way he moved, in every way he didn't. She drove him harder. He held. She pushed everything she had at him, because if she stopped, she would have to acknowledge what she already knew, and she was not ready to know it yet, and he did not give ground carelessly. He gave it on his own terms, always 1 step ahead. She stopped. She stood in the middle of the courtyard, with her chest heaving and her sword at her side, and looked at the masked alpha standing still across from her. The crowd had gone very quiet. She did not look at them. She looked at him, at the way he stood, the way his weight was settled, the particular economy of how he held his blade, easy and unhurried. She knew that stance. She knew it the way you know something you have seen every morning for weeks. She knew it the way you know a silence, or a scar on a jaw, or the specific quality of being watched by someone who was actually watching. Her heart was very loud in her ears. She did not want to be right. She already was. "Take it off," she said. Her voice came out steady, and she was grateful for that. He didn't move. The courtyard held its breath. Take it off. Slower this time. Each word its own sentence. He was still for 1 more moment. Then his hand came up, slowly. She watched his fingers find the clasp at the side of the mask. She watched them pause there. She thought, he's giving me a moment. She thought, he knows I already know. She thought, for one wild, unguarded second, he came back. The clasp released. The mask came down. The courtyard erupted. She heard none of it. Cale looked at her across the yard, not performing, not braced, just present, the way he had always been, exactly himself. She crossed the courtyard. She didn't decide to. Her feet simply moved, the way they moved when something was already decided in a place deeper than thought. She stopped in front of him. He waited. "Even after everything you taught me," she said, quietly, just for him, "I still couldn't beat you." Something released in his face. Not triumph. Nothing like that. Something more like a man who had been holding his breath for a very long time. "I know," he said. "That," she said, "is either very impressive or very annoying. Probably both." "Probably," she agreed. She did not look away. He did not look away. Then the herald's voice cut through the noise of the courtyard, formal and carrying, the way heralds were trained to speak, so no one could pretend they hadn't heard. Cale Ashvaran, firstborn heir of the Alpha Lord of North Hollow. The courtyard went to a different kind of quiet. Zara did not move. She stood exactly where she was, close enough to see the scar on his jaw, close enough to watch his face as the name landed between them. He did not look away from her. He did not explain, did not reach for words. He simply held her gaze and let her have whatever she needed to do with what she had just heard. She thought about the fence rail, the first morning. That was a great move. You could have done more with it. She thought about every session, every correction, every morning she had manufactured a reason to come back. She thought about the agreement, training only, and the quiet cost of sitting with that in the dark. She thought about the world she had been running from her whole life. She thought about the fact that she had already crossed the courtyard before the herald spoke. She had not known his name. She had chosen him anyway. That was hers. That could not be taken back or reframed or handed to anyone else. It had happened before the politics arrived, before the bloodline was announced, before the world had a chance to make it into something it could use. She had chosen on her own terms. Even here, even now. She looked at him for one long moment. "North Hollow," she said. "Yes," he said. "You could have told me." "Yes," he said again. A pause. "Why didn't you?" He was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, it was careful, not rehearsed, just honest in the way of someone choosing each word because it matters. "Because I wanted you to know me," he said, "before you knew what I came from." The courtyard was very still. She held his gaze. Then, "Your left side," she said. "Every third combination. You still drop your guard." Something moved through his face that was almost a smile. "I know," he said. "I was hoping you wouldn't notice." "I notice everything," she said. "I know that too," he said. She looked at him for one more moment. Then she turned and walked back across the yard, sword at her side, chin level, every eye in the courtyard on her. And she felt, for the first time in as long as she could remember, like the ground beneath her feet was entirely her own. Her father said nothing. He simply watched her and felt something settle in his chest that had been restless for years. In the months that followed, the mate union was held at the turn of the season. Not in the grand receiving hall, where her father conducted state business. Not with the formal procession her sisters had always imagined for her. Zara had been clear on this. and for once no one argued. It was held in the training ground. She stood in the morning light with her sword at her hip, because she had been asked if she wanted to set it aside for the ceremony, and she had looked at the person who asked with such complete stillness that the question was never raised again. And she watched Cale cross the yard toward her, the way he had crossed it 100 times before, unhurried, settled, like he had nowhere else to be. She thought about the first morning she had stood in this yard and felt something move in her chest, and driven through the next combination to kill it. She thought about all the mornings after. She had fought every law, every suitor, every expectation this kingdom had ever placed on her. She had built her walls with both hands and maintained them for years, and had been entirely prepared to live inside them forever. And here she was, not because she had been conquered, not because the law had finally caught her, not because a bloodline had aligned or a political house had maneuvered correctly, because one morning, a man with no crest and no title had stood at her fence and told her she could have done more, and he had been right, and she had come back the next day, and the day after that, and every day after that, until coming back was simply what she did. She had chosen this. Every single part of it. That was the thing no ceremony could give her, and no law could take away. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy the story, kindly like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying until the end.